Welcome to Fire Your Doctor with your host, Dr. Danielle Lockwood.
And Richard Lockwood.
Hey, wait a minute.
I moved my microphone out of the way.
This says part one again.
I know.
Get that out of here. It is episode 49. I will not have episode 48 notes in front of me.
Thank you. Sorry.
I have standards over here.
I am repenting. Okay.
They're not great standards, but they are standards.
Okay, this is part 2 in our Hormone Purgatory series.
Sure.
In this episode, we're going to talk about what's actually happening in your body. And this is the mechanism episode. This is less of what you feel and more about what is happening.
Can we start with some hope, though? I feel like in the last episode, we kind of described what was wrong, but you mentioned early in that episode that you have actually had pretty good clinical outcomes as far as, obviously, you're not going to reverse perimenopause forever, but as far as resolving early perimenopause, like what kind of outcomes should people expect?
Number one, it's not a set it and forget it.
Okay.
So you can't just be like, here's my dose of estrogen or progesterone or whatever you're doing, and here's my diet, and this is what I'm just going to do forever and a day.
Okay.
Right? Because with definitely different parts of your cycle, and then different parts of as you get closer to that menopause.
Seasons of life.
It's going to have to shift. Okay. So it's not a set it and forget it.
But with active management, we could expect restored quality of life.
People feel great. Yeah.
Great. That's what we want to know.
Yeah. People feel great.
You will feel great.
You will feel great.
You will have restored quality of life.
Yes.
Is it ADLs and all that?
Yes. Yeah.
Sure.
And if you don't have a naturopathic doctor who's trained this way, because not all naturopathic doctors are created equally. I happen to do a lot of functional medicine and a lot of other things that some naturopaths don't do. I do herbs, I do all that. However, even just a really good integrative nutritionist can go a long way. And working with a great trainer can go a long way.
We had said that we were going to talk a little bit more about food, but we just briefly touched on it in the last episode.
I honestly wrote these a while ago.
That's okay.
And so I don't remember if I go into details with food.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that as like
the
one of the
last
things
episode
that you
is
were
what
seeing.
actually helps.
The last.
So this is the next episode.
Then we've got to talk about it in episode 50.
Definitely.
Okay. Because you mentioned that with your kind of pediatric case study that you mentioned briefly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about food, but we can go into it later. We'll talk about detox as well and all those things. Okay. So this episode.
It's exciting.
So it is not just one hormone dropping. I think that's the other thing. People think I'm losing estrogen. It's a system-wide adaptation involving the ovaries, the brain, the adrenals, the thyroid, the blood sugar, sleep patterns, and stress biology.
So this is kind of getting into your concept of hormone hierarchy.
Yes.
Do we need to review that, or are people pretty good on it?
So there's a order in which the hormones need to heal. So for example, people come in and they're like, oh, I just need some hormones. Can you just give me some estrogen or progesterone or whatever it might be, or testosterone or whatever? That will help you for a while, maybe a month or two, and you'll be like, I feel great. However, you do not have the body to sustain that amount of hormones coming in. You need your liver working, you need your thyroid working, you need your blood sugar balanced, and you need to treat the real reason it probably happened in the first place is that you're very depleted and you're not dealing with the stress very well.
Okay.
So the first thing on the top of the hierarchy is foundational is blood sugar. You have to have your blood sugar stabilized.
Gotcha.
The second thing on the hierarchy is stress, adrenaline, cortisol response. You have to balance that. The third thing on the hierarchy is your thyroid. Your thyroid has to work and communicate with the rest of your endocrine system effectively. And finally, if those things are in order, your hormones will stabilize.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of in psychology, they have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That your need for like purpose and belonging and these types of social needs, it doesn't really matter if basic needs, say like food, shelter, safety, just basic survival isn't met, but you've got to have those foundational things in place. Otherwise, it's like, hey, everybody loves you. And you're like, I'm homeless and I'm starving, but I'm so happy that I have a great self-esteem, right? And so I think that's kind of a way to understand this hormone hierarchy is that if your stress is a mess, if this is a mess, cortisol, blah, blah, blah,
throwing
progesterone.
Hormones into that is like fuel on the fire sometimes.
Right. I feel great.
And we talked about this in the men's episodes, but if you start injecting testosterone, which is the best way to get the testosterone in the system, you're probably going to have to keep doing that. It
Mm.
actually shuts down your testicular ability to make the testosterone. It's a negative feedback loop.
Yeah.
So you really have to think about that as a long term. You want to use that as a last resort. You maybe want to just fix how your hormones are being processed and
Mhm.
see if you can't stabilize it that way first.
Do you see that same thing happen with your female patients and like
Possibly.
estrogen and
Oh,
like bioidenticals?
not as much because you're not suppressing it you're not like overriding it at such a level. The other thing is with estrogen, I think we talk about in this episode, before you go into menopause, you'll make estrogen through your ovaries. Post menopause, you'll make it in your fat tissue.
Interesting.
So as long as you have some fat on the body, you are going to make estrogen.
Yeah, I think the guidelines are actually, as far as like a healthy percentage, isn't like a healthy female considered like in the 20% kind of range, still
Somewhere,
healthy?
yeah, it's like 18 to 22%, I
Yeah,
think.
would be kind of still look fairly lean and athletic as a
Mhm.
woman.
But muscles are your friend for sure.
Yeah, actually, that's something that you've mentioned a lot, and even Dr. Tina Moore and like the
Mhm.
whole pain free and strong, and like one of her things that she really pushed was you'd get people that come in and they're just blown out, hormones are blown out.
Yeah.
Maybe even focusing a lot on kind of cardio and endurance because they want to be like really lean and athletic. But she's like, why don't you go lift weights, like
Yep.
Olympic lifts type stuff, like squats and power cleans
Yep.
and
Yep.
different things like that?
So we do that.
Getting really good clinical results from that.
It's better. It's good. So the real question women are asking, and these are questions that come up in our clinic and that I've heard, is it low estrogen or is it too much estrogen? We talked about that,
Yes.
right? Yes, and yes. Why am I anxious when I've never been an anxious person? Right?
Mm,
We talked about how estrogen uses the same receptors as the ones that serotonin and dopamine use, right? So it's highly connected to your neurotransmitters. Why is my weight changing, especially in my belly? We just said insulin resistance starts in the fat, and you'll usually see it show up as belly fat, and it's much more inflammatory there.
but is that kind of the cortisol response where you get the belly fat
Yes.
and the fat on the back of your neck?
Totally.
Okay.
Yes. Why do my symptoms come in waves instead of staying consistent? Period to period. You could have your left ovary firing on all cylinders one month, and the next month your other ovary, which is not firing on all cylinders, take over, or vice versa. So again, you're going to see a fluctuation during this time. Sometimes you're in a bust, sometimes you're in a boom, right?
Right. So you would say that before your levels might change, the way that those levels are released into your body could be changing. And maybe that could be part of the reason that people's lived experience is more extreme than their lab results at first.
Right.
I'm
It's
just
true.
curious,
No, it's true.
because if they
I
catch you at the middle of a wave, they're just
Right.
like, it is perfectly normal. What's doing I
Yeah,
don't like the zoom in.
you weaved.
No, I know, but yeah, this kind of you're talking about this boom and bust cycle where your monthly average estrogen might be normal or at least close to normal, but you're going through that estrogen's being dispersed into the body in a way that is
Yeah,
a
so
lot more
one of the
violent.
things I might ask a patient to do would be to try to do a blood draw around the time where they have their worst symptoms. So if they're like have their worst symptoms right before their period versus right after their period starts. So those are helpful things. Obviously, we'd love to do like serial samples where we would get it throughout the
Multiple
cycle
and yeah.
and just see what it is. But oftentimes we're just looking at a snapshot. So I try to have them pick what's the worst part of your cycle, try to draw it within a day or two of that.
So you could get a snapshot of what your hormones are
What it
doing
is
when
that's
you don't
causing
like
that.
how you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Sometimes I have good ideas.
Well, you did marry me, so
Hey, yo, why do I feel we talked about that? How are cortisol, insulin, and thyroid all getting dragged into this? We talked about this. That's the hierarchy.
yeah.
You have to have them balanced in order to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right. We're also going to talk about what the research says, and
You know,
we are going to also talk about peptides as well.
Tony
PLPs.
Robbins, you were talking about how in the last episode, how basically a lot of working professionals, what we would call like high performance people, have been compensating in one or more areas of their life. And then they'll hit mid 40 or mid 30s into their 40s, and things just the wheels start falling off. And it reminds me of this. Remember, Tony Robbins did this he called it the wheel of life. And I don't know if he invented it, but whatever. This is where I heard it
May
first.
had it too.
Yeah.
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 Let's
But it was
probably
this
just
idea of here's all the aspects of your life. Here's your personal life. Here's your spiritual life. Here's your work and professional life and physical
money,
health,
finance.
how you're good with money and on all these things. And he was like, rate yourself on each one of these things. And like, that's your wheel. And I think that one of the things that's happening is that hormone hierarchy is kind of touching on some of these different wheels. It's like, how's your stress management? How's your blood sugar? So, like, how's your diet? How's your stress? How's your sleep? And as it touches on these different things, you might have been compensating, but all of a sudden it's getting pretty lopsided by the time we're in our 30s or 40s. And then the one that you were kind of leaning on, it's just like, I was always really good at work, or I was always really good at my physical health. And then the one thing that you had that was your really good strong suit starts to suffer because the other aspects have been neglected.
Yes. Great example. And then you got a lumpy wheel that's bumpy. Remember, he's like, you want it as round as possible.
Meaning all the aspects of your life
and
are
you
balanced.
might not be 100%. You might have to settle, but it's better to have the balance than to have like a 100%. I'm 100% great in my health, but my relationships are too.
Yeah, right. Because I spent all day at the gym and didn't see my kids today, kind of thing, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or my money and my finances 100%, but now my physical health and my mental health is going down.
Which we see that a ton with like CEOs and like
and then they spend all their money on medical specialists.
Yes.
And so then their money goes down.
Yeah.
So like it or not, like sooner or later, those high edges that we've been relying on will get ground down.
Why don't you ask me these questions? Because then it'll prompt me to answer.
Okay, yeah. I'm just telling you random anecdotes about what hormone usually changes first, estrogen or progesterone?
Progesterone, 100%.
Okay.
It starts earlier than you think, honestly.
Well, that's kind of what we were saying in the last episode, that usually the progesterone, especially because a lot of them are OTC topical, that plant-based and all that, that would be your first kind of intervention.
Very safe. There's not a high level of progesterone. And when we're talking about progesterone, I'm not talking about progestin, which is the synthetic fake form of progesterone.
Like a pharmaceutical.
Like a pharmaceutical one found in like birth control or things like that. That one has actually been linked to cancers. Bioidentical progesterone has not. Okay. It's very safe and it's very calming, right? Because we talked about in the last episode, it is a GABA agonist, meaning it's pushes your neurotransmitter GABA, which is your inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's very calming to the system. So progesterone is very calming. We live in a world where most women are a little bit estrogen dominant, meaning they have a lot of excess estrogen because of the plastics, pesticides, poor diet, all of those things. They're carrying insulin resistance. They're carrying extra fat on the body. So they're making it in their ovaries, plus they're getting it from the fat in their body. So if you have really high estrogen, guess what? You're going to push down your progesterone.
Is it actually because of this? Is it healthier for a woman to be a little bit heavier post menopause then for that reason, just to have a little bit of that residual estrogen production?
Yes. You don't want a woman to be like stick bone. You don't.
Right. Well, especially not after menopause, it sounds like.
No, because you're going to be a risk. That's going to be a huge risk factor for osteoporosis.
Sure.
And yes, you're going to have a very difficult time making natural estrogen in the body.
Okay.
So yeah, good question.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that you could obviously go too far the other way, but it might just be, hey, listen, I'm not 22 anymore. Maybe it'd be healthier for me to be, say, 5 to 10 pounds heavier.
I want 5 to 10 pounds of muscle on people.
Okay.
My goal is, hey, you should be putting on actually like 15 pounds of muscle before you hit menopause.
Okay.
That would be ideal.
No, but I was talking about specifically with estrogen is produced in fat cells or.
But you don't want, women shouldn't be at that low of a percentage of body fat in general because of that.
Just in general.
In general.
That's actually something that we've seen with our very like athletic patients and it's kind of this question of like, how long can you be in a competition body? And I actually ran into this I'm not a woman, but I ran into this in martial arts where it was like, I couldn't stay that skinny for that long without having some health consequences.
And we talked about how athletes aren't necessarily healthy.
Well, if you mean
their
healthy,
peak performance.
Yes. Healthy as far as peak performance. I'm going to go crush this.
Yes.
This ultra marathon, not necessarily healthy as in I'm going to have balanced thyroid at 68 years old.
Yep.
So
Yep.
those are not the same thing. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to it. Why do so many women think they have estrogen deficiency when they actually have estrogen chaos? That's interesting phrasing.
Yeah. And this is why it's so important to measure what's actually going on. So we can measure estrogen in the blood by a simple blood test and see what's actually happening. That will not tell us what they're producing
When?
and when, right? So
Right.
we get a snapshot of it and we could have a complete fluctuation going from I have way too much to I don't
Hmm.
have enough in the same month.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the weather like in Portland, Oregon?
Yeah.
Oh, it's sunny all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Because you visited there when it was sunny?
Like right now,
Yeah.
but you weren't here
An hour
an
ago
hour ago and it
when it
was
was
pouring
raining.
rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that's very similar for women and there's also I just want to teach a little bit of anatomy and physiology on this. When you're having periods, women, you are going to use your adrenals to produce progesterone from the day you start bleeding till about 10 to 14 days into the cycle. So you're relying on your adrenals. When ovulation hits, that is the rise in progesterone, that's in estrogen coming from your ovaries. So your ovaries take over the second half of the cycle. The problem is in perimenopause, sometimes it doesn't secrete as much as it used to.
the
Both,
ovaries.
oh, yes, yeah, the ovaries, both the progesterone and the estrogen. So you're relying
Yeah.
more on that adrenal secretion that you don't have because you've worked yourself to the bone. You don't rest, you're not sleeping, your blood sugar's a mess.
Well, that's a one too, because normally what you were saying before would be okay, for the first week or the first phase, I'm relying on or not but not mine, but
Mhm.
one would be relying on the adrenal glands to be producing the progesterone for the early cycle,
Mhm.
right? And then all of a sudden we have the ovaries kicking in to produce estrogen and progesterone, but in perimenopause, the ovaries may or may not
Yep.
have an adequate supply. And so you might actually hit a dearth or like a crash mid cycle or kind
Yes.
of in that kind of middle third of that
Yes.
cycle, but you might not.
Is where I think tracking it very specifically, it's like, well, when do you have your symptoms?
Mm.
If they say, well, I have my symptoms right before or really close to where I had ovulation mid cycle, you're going to want to supplement them at the end of the cycle. But if they're having a crash,
So what failed
I'm
first?
exhausted, can't get
Adrenals.
off. Yep, I can't get off. You might need to
Gotcha.
supplement them through the cycle.
Now, so here's the question. So sometimes you would get symptoms, say, of like a lingering period or something like that. Would that be a sign of adrenal fatigue because you're not getting those early hormones produced by the adrenal glands?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Because, yeah, that would be something that would be kind of a
What
nuance.
stabilizes the adrenal glands? Well, pregnenolone. So that is the top line hormone that makes all the other hormones, both men and women have it. That will get robbed. It's called a pregnenolone steal after the cortisol has been depleting the progesterone for a while. So first it goes after
Okay.
the progesterone, then it will go after the pregnenolone.
Okay.
So that's why you got to look for them. And actually I made the mistake of only looking for that in women for years. And now I look at it in men and I cannot believe how low it is in
For
men.
pregnenolone.
Pregnenolone. Yep.
Some of the biohackers, like the men that I know that are really into the peptides and biohacking, will talk about pregnenolone and those different things as
Well,
well. So,
amazing stuff for the brain as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, very
So,
intelligent people
but
that are talking about
but
it
it
in men.
also can really disrupt your sleep cycle if it's not dosed appropriately. But
Interesting.
that's neither here nor there.
Interesting. So
Okay.
you would even use that as a precursor to kind of almost any of your hormones or?
I use it to repair the adrenals
Okay.
and I use it to repair brain barrier stuff as well. So,
Okay.
yeah, pregnenolone in combination with
Hmm.
progesterone, very good. Hyperbaric oxygen, very good at helping with repairing post concussion. Very good.
So you could even almost narrow down what organ system you might want to look at depending on when a patient's worst symptoms are. So
Totally.
period that's kind of lingering, maybe it won't end, or early in cycle trouble, adrenals. Well, mid cycle to late in cycle, leading to maybe a more severe PMS kind of thing, ovaries.
Yes, but maybe it's because they're so depleted by the time they got the progesterone in the system from the ovaries because their adrenals are it. So
Well, sure, nothing's
nothing's
a
like
hundred, like,
100%,
but
but
yeah,
it
I'm
kind of
just kind of
gives me a
thinking about
clue.
this and trying to
It's an
understand where you're coming from.
interesting. Okay.
All right. What's the, yeah, I'm just like thinking some of these questions we've kind of covered, but what's the relationship between progesterone decline and anxiety, irritability, and insomnia?
GABA. So we talked about that.
Mm,
So you're not getting that calming effect and you're not getting that blood sugar stability
okay.
that you get when you have enough progesterone. Okay.
Why does perimenopause suddenly expose blood sugar problems that were already there?
Kind of the same thing. Progesterone stabilizes blood sugar. So if you don't have enough of it, you're going to have trouble stabilizing your blood sugar. And we also see a lot of deficiencies, right? So even things like chromium deficiency, inositol, which is a subset of the B vitamins, those types of things.
Okay.
We see depletion there.
Okay.
But we've already talked about belly
Yeah,
fat.
I feel like we talked about,
We
like,
talked about that.
yeah, I've talked about a lot of these.
Yeah,
Angled and
I think those are good.
perimenopause.
I think we covered that. So I think perimenopause, it's not a simple deficiency state. It's actually a volatile hormonal transition layered onto stress, blood sugar, sleep disruption, and that midlife metabolic change.
So you would be looking at more like secondary factors that would lead the body to stabilize its release and processing of
Mm.
estrogen and cortisol and progesterone.
Yeah. So it's not a single hormone problem. It's not like, oh, perimenopause is here. You just need progesterone. Have a nice day.
Yeah, I really like this hierarchy of needs analogy. It's like, let's build this foundation before we start bringing in like the hormone that we want.
Yeah. So people will say, my hormones are low. And I'll say, no, your hormones are unstable, not just low.
Right, right.
So it's not just estrogen that's low. So estrogen can spike high, it can crash low, it can fluctuate rapidly.
I guess that makes sense with the presentation of like mood swings and irritability and all these things.
So read off some of the symptoms of high estrogen spikes.
Breast tenderness, migraines, irritability, and heavy periods.
Great. Symptoms of low estrogen dips.
Brain fog, low mood, hot flashes, and vaginal dryness.
Okay. Research says that estrogen fluctuates unpredictably in perimenopause. These fluctuations affect neurotransmitters like serotonin. Okay, serotonin we would know more as like a brain hormone. We know that it is
Sure.
produced in the gut.
Lots of digestion stuff with serotonin.
Totally. Totally. And in fact, if you are on or tend to run imbalanced in serotonin, you really need to be working on your digestive system.
Yeah.
It's big, really big.
Yeah. There's some interesting research with some of the basically gut bacteria and microbes that are actually making human hormones in the body.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I really like those studies.
Yeah. Eventually.
Nerdy, like spidey senses like go up. And I'm like,
yeah,
we're going to make a probiotic to do this.
Yeah.
No, we have ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, in the future, you could take a probiotic that would build this.
Could you come closer to me?
Okay, well,
Yeah, you're like off center or just tilt towards me.
These chairs are, you just want to be near me.
Because you're so beautiful.
I am.
Okay, so progesterone is the first domino to fall.
Sure.
So this is what most people miss. Progesterone declines a lot earlier than estrogen. I think this is due to inconsistent ovulation, but also to the estrogen dominance that we've been talking about. And the use of progesterone when somebody is in a chronic stressed state. Who's not in a stressed state? Like everybody's stressed.
Like Washington?
Oregon, California, like which state? It's all states, right? Everybody's stressed. So we see anxiety. When we see progesterone drop, we see an increase in anxiety. We see sleep starts to worsen and we see irritability.
Okay.
Okay. So what's the research say? The research says that progesterone supports the calming neurotransmitter GABA, and that decline contributes to anxiety and insomnia.
Yeah, this is kind of in the last episode. I was kind of just wondering, I was like, how much should we be asking this and how much should this type of thing, like regardless of gender, but particularly for our female patients with mental health?
I want to scream it from the hilltops. Oh my gosh.
That this should be part of pre-screening for
I have the best
all of
case
these
study
things.
for this. Let me tell you about this case
All right,
study.
let's wrap.
Okay, this girl, she's about 22 years old. She came in, her mom brought her in. I mean, high anxiety, like panic attacks, very high anxiety, and we just do what we do. We worked the case up. We found out she had horrible periods. She's had them that way her whole life. She was placed on an SSRI medication because the anxiety was so bad. She actually got like almost like a serotonin type syndrome, heart
I was almost
palpitations,
mentioned that earlier.
really had a terrible reaction to this drug, had to be hospitalized for suicidal ideation when she had never been suicidal before. They diagnosed her with PMDD, which is like a premenstrual dysphoria that has to do with depression and anxiety. Okay. So typically the treatment for that is going to be an SSRI, but she had a very terrible reaction to it. I said, you know what? We're going to work up the case. And sure enough, she was super estrogen dominant, very low in her progesterone, and she was very nutrient deficient. Gut was a mess,
Mm.
liver was a mess, all of those things.
Where'd you start? Where did you start with the case? Like, what was the first thing? So this is a lot of things going on here.
I started with casting out fear, actually.
Okay, so spiritual
I
and
did a
emotional.
spiritual emotional. I did an NET session with her that was
Yeah.
incredibly powerful and reoriented her to Jesus, really. Just got her grounded in that. Next thing we worked on was we eliminated things that were stimulant. For example, caffeine. She was consuming a ton of caffeine, which by the way, caffeine is a competitor for estrogen processing, especially if you have a SNP called COMT, which I've mentioned before. I did higher doses of magnesium and activated B6 for her to get the COMT SNP moving, repleted her B vitamins slowly because she overmethylates easily, and just got her mitochondria working. I did not give her any medication at first. About a month in, she came back. She's already feeling better. She's pooping every day. Things are starting to detox. I was like, great. Now this is the sign I can start adding in some progesterone. So I added in progesterone to her. She needed a very high dose of progesterone. She was up to almost 2,000 milligrams a day. If you know how to dose progesterone, typically people are given somewhere between 20 milligrams and 200. But this person had depleted and was so high in cortisol that I needed to actually use it to start to bring down and stabilize the adrenal glands. So we did a high dose of progesterone. It was like night and day. The mom brought her in and she was just shocked. She's like, she's calmer. She's not 100%, but she's calmer.
Yeah.
She's actually sleeping now. So we just started playing with that, the progesterone dose. Little by little, we brought it down because we got her system working better. Her nutrition was cleaned up.
Was she able to titrate off the SS?
Oh, she couldn't. She was already titrated off of it when we saw her because she had
took
such
it, reacted,
she
and then,
had, yeah, and she was hospitalized. So they were like, oh, maybe we got it. So all
like
of that.
any of the other,
But she had side effects still a year later from the SSR. She had this tingling, jolting sensation that would come through her ever since she had been put on that SSRI.
any benzos or like anything like that? Okay.
Nothing like that.
Because that'll give you like those ticks.
No, none of it. So, I mean, she is a transformed, like, this is a totally new person.
Yeah, I felt like this is a very technical analysis, and I appreciate that. But within that, I felt actually just hearing it like a lot of emotion. Like, you know, I have a little girl, we have a little girl together, and just imagining that, you know, what is this young life? You know, here's a 22-year-old woman with her entire life ahead of her, and she's riddled with this anxiety, ended up hospitalized, had this terrible reaction and feeling suicidal. These things actually have a human impact. It's not just like someone's periods were uncomfortable or something. This is debilitating stuff.
Debilitating and
for someone
misdiagnosed when really she was dealing with a horrible estrogen dominance issue that led to lots of metabolic issues. And then she really thought she was going crazy. I mean, she really thought she was going crazy. Her family thought she was going crazy. She was not able to work. Like, it was awful. It was awful. They were just, you know what? God is so good. He just freed her. It was so amazing to watch. It's a great case.
Hearing that case study, it seems like that might be beyond the scope of what a lot of our viewers could just kind of do at home. What would you advise for somebody that's, say, dealing with maybe like that light, like they're not quite, they didn't end up hospitalized, but they've just, you know, the mood swings, some of that stuff.
Clean up your diet, number one.
Okay.
You can't be hooked on alcohol. You can't be hooked on drugs, obviously. You can't be just drinking a bunch of caffeine. You can't be on stimulants. something as simple as just getting green vegetables in, which are full of greens. I always make our family eat a lot of greens.
That's true.
They're full of B vitamins. It helps with MTHFR if you have that. It's got magnesium in it. It's got a great source of trace minerals.
Hmm.
So mix power greens with every single meal.
Right.
Protein. We're going to talk about this in the next episode more, but
Okay.
I think it's just like start with the basics. Read our book. Follow what we're saying in the Fire Your Doctor
At
book.
4 a.m. when you're up because you're anxious.
Yes. Like
No.
if people did what was in our book, they would get better. They wouldn't have to then come and see us, which we
Yeah.
love you. We're fine seeing you, but we're also like
Busy.
we're busy. We're busy over here, right?
Yeah.
And by the way,
Well, but also it's just there's a lot of these things. If you're not that bad off, why couldn't people
right,
just solve it? Yeah.
right. And then there's a book. Oh my goodness, it's the name of the doctor. Her name is Dr. Katrina Dalton. She's out of the UK. She's an OBGYN, and that book was very good. And it gave case studies of this, which really it was all these women who had been hospitalized in mental institutions because they were progesterone deficient.
No, what was that book called again? I remember it, but I'm trying to remember the name.
Time of the month or
Yeah, I thought it was some
month.
woman, not a woman.
It's on it was on my desk for like ever.
No, I remember it. I
can look it up. But yeah,
I just think it would be useful for people.
Yeah, that's
as
a great resource.
No, I remember that Dalton, like the Dalton gang.
It's like yeah.
Yeah, we're looking it up in real time.
I'm looking at but she's passed away now. She passed away in 2004, but what is her name of her book?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll find
Oh
it.
man, like I'm getting people derailed.
Yeah.
I'm getting derailed.
Yeah. Katharina is her name, Dalton.
Okay. Yeah.
And just a pioneer in PMS. I mean, really, she was so good. Does Wikipedia have it?
Oh, Wikipedia is going.
Accomplished. She was an endocrinologist consulting. Yep. Very good. Yeah. She refused to use any of the progestins, which are the synthetic progesterones.
Well, but that's what I'm just thinking is just like, there was just such a interesting thing because you're like, why isn't this part of standard of care? Because if you're talking about panic attacks and all of these different things, and to the point that people are getting, that people are like literally having life-changing events once a month. There you go.
Yeah, it was first published in 1978. So this isn't like new information.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not been adopted by most of the docs because they think that the birth control has solved the problem when it has not.
But here's the problem though. If you're a physician and somebody's in your office with a chief complaint and you give them this birth control and they feel better, then to that physician, the problem is solved.
Right. Exactly.
But the problem is that patient has to go home 3 months later, 6 months later, 5 years later, and then the patient has to live with the outcome that they've just kind of kicked the can down the road.
Not to mention, birth control wrecks your gut. So it actually leads to serotonin deficiencies and imbalances. Depression. So weirdly enough, they've been on birth control all these years and all of a sudden they just need an anxiety medication or they need a thyroid medication because they've depleted themselves of B vitamins and other minerals that the thyroid needs.
Right.
This isn't a zero, you guys. We haven't even talked about blood clots. We haven't even talked about cancer risk. We haven't talked about any of these things. Synthetic hormones in general. So I don't know. I'm like got fired up about this. I get so angry. I just find we became physicians because we're scientists. We're scientists. We want to discover things. We want to know the answer to things. We want to understand the body on a deeper level. And it's just like it's just been lost. And it's just the whole art of being a doctor, being a physician, it's been lost. It's really sad to me. But I love talking to other doctors who get this. I actually have a lot of doctor friends who we like get together and nerd out on this. And they just think outside the box. I just like working with doctors who think outside the box. I think it's so fun.
I guess, but is it really outside the box if
you're be the box?
No, that reference that you gave was first published in 1978. And so here it's still this kind of seminal work on the topic.
I just saw this thing. There's research that says it takes the research that they do in order to implement it in the clinic. It takes an average of 17 years for it to be implemented or even discussed in the clinic. Honestly, I would say it's more like 30 years. It's insane.
There is this phrase that just rang in my mind. I forget who first said it, but it was an astrophysicist, and he was talking about just basically the hard sciences. And he said, physics advances one funeral at a time.
So true.
And what he meant is that there's an establishment, there's professionals in this industry, there's educators, there's other people with books out and teaching out, and that entrenched old guard is going to defend their ideas and the way that they taught it, because that's their legacy. And then as they kind of age out and retire and or pass away, all of a sudden it's just like, well, hey, what about this new idea? And it's like, yeah, that new idea is actually 30 or 40 years old at this point. And a grad student came up with it and then got pushed out of the program and his work
Well,
was buried.
just think about something as simple as probiotics. We talked about in this book. It's like, well, of course, if you're going to annihilate somebody's gut, you probably want to refill it with something. I mean, that's just basic at this point. But when we first mentioned it as naturopathic doctors like 35 years ago, they were like, "Oh my gosh, why would you feed
You're
them
giving people
bacteria?
germs."
This is horrible."
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, right? Like,
there's a lot of other kind of storylines that are kind of like open loops that you have. Like you were talking about greens and stuff like that and fixing diet.
yeah,
And there is a delta, like you were talking about bioidentical hormones versus synthetic hormones. There's also a big delta between bioavailable and kind of plant-based or like phytonutrients versus whatever chemistry nutrients or like industrial nutrients.
yeah, and it's hard because like there's actually really good advances in certain synthetic things. Like for example, they figured out how to make insulin that's human, pretty much mimics what the human structure looks like through recombinant bacteria, right? And they're using that same technology to create this course I'm taking right now, the microimmunology course. It's like that's how they're using it, or they're deriving it from the plant. So like they're taking the stem cell from the plant and like putting, deriving the cytokine from there. So I'm not anti the technology of it. I just need to know that it's going to be received by the body properly and that people are testing for that.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
there's also the wider just breach of trust in just all the institutions, where basically it's become obvious to many, and it should be obvious to all, that many of our trusted institutions are basically defending just bad work, And they're doing it for their own selfish reasons, to defend their legacy, to defend their friends, to defend their institution, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, the anxiety that these women feel, it's not random. It's
okay.
actually, you don't have enough of the calming hormone. It's disappearing. And
Right.
we might see it way earlier than you'd think.
This is kind of gets into a lot of these problems like this are kind of a chicken or the egg thing, because you also mentioned at the beginning and you kind of just breezed on, just powered through, but you did mention like that there was like more of a spiritual encounter as well, where you really had to confront the spirit of fear in this person, and this person needed to have an encounter with Jesus. And so you can kind of get into this chicken or the egg, I think. Am I feeling anxious because my hormones are off? And then now that's kind of creating this fear spiral. And now I need this kind of spiritual intervention as well. Or is this a spiritual problem that is now flowing out into my hormones? Yes. Yes. So,
In this particular
yeah.
case, it was a very specific.
And I mean, let's not give away.
No, I'm
Yeah,
not going to give it
of
away.
course
But
not. But
there was a specific event that felt very like it triggered all of this. And when somebody can put in their historical timeline something that specific, I'm just like, oh man, we're going to have to do that first. Which is most doctors and many naturopathic doctors, they're not even trained to know how to do anything about that. They would
right.
go to a counselor or go to a whatever or go to I don't know what, right?
Yeah. But really, it's the same problem.
But it is the same problem.
Yeah.
And so you got to nip it, cut off the head of the snake.
Right. And that is problem that is showing up in your spiritual life, and it's also showing up in your hormonal health and then in your behavioral and mental health.
And once things started to align for her, then she started to make much better decisions in her life too.
Yeah, and at that point you would be and that's the thing too, is your lifestyle, if your emotions and your coping mechanisms and your spirituality is so compromised, you are not going to make lifestyle choices that are going to align with balanced hormones.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Hey, your brother, sister.
You're my brother too.
Well, whatever.
Not
Really.
Not really.
No,
No, like spiritually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. The brain hormone connection. Okay. So we've talked about all of this already. that estrogen affects serotonin, which affects the mood, which affects dopamine, which affects motivation, cognition, focus, and memory. What does the research say? Yes, Johns Hopkins agrees. Mood, memory, and emotional regulation are impacted by hormones. So,
Who knew?
who knew? Weird. Right. Cortisol is the silent amplifier. Hormone shifts increase sensitivity to stress, but stress increases hormone shifts. Stress worsens hormone imbalance. You see a higher cortisol, you see poorer sleep, you see increased fat storage, you see emotional reactivity. What does the research say? Chronic stress worsens sleep disruption, hot flashes, and mood swings.
Well, when you start looking at it, what also goes with bad food choices? Stress, poor sleep, emotional reactivity. And so it's like funny that your emotional state, you're creating this situation where hormonally you're more likely to have weight stick to you, but also behaviorally, because of that hormone picture, you're also more likely to engage in lifestyle that is going to lead to weight gain as well. So it's kind of like that 1-2.
And this is what the allostatic load theory is, which if you look
Gotcha.
that up, it's we only have a capacity to hold so much until it breaks,
Okay.
right? So perimenopause doesn't cause stress, exposure it exposes how much stress your system is already carrying.
It is a measurement of the stress that is there, a
Correct.
revealing, as you were saying in the last. Okay, I like that.
Correct. And unfortunately, most women wait until they're broken. They wait until they're like pretty much on the brink of menopause in
Mm.
order to seek treatment.
Are they just like feeling like shame about it or just
They
like
just don't
ignoring
know.
it
I
or
just think they don't know. They're just
mm,
trying to compensate. Then they're usually gaining more and more weight. They've tried all the diets, they've tried all the different things, so it's just a thing. Blood sugar and metabolism. So we obviously see again increased insulin resistance, more fat storage, especially abdominal. And
oh,
we see energy crashes. And we see in the research, 2003 study, midlife women develop an increase in insulin resistance even without lifestyle changes. Again, cannot do the same thing that you did in your 20s and 30s to deal with your 40s and 50s. You just can't.
I actually there's just so much truth in that. Like you really start to look at you start to see the compounding effects as you and I like allegedly. I mean, she's in her 20s still, but I am in my 40s. So it's like don't judge me for robbing from the cradle over here. But no, there is this cumulative and compounding effect that you have that's like a multiplication of just like the sum of your life. And it's like you'll start to see it. There's this way that it's just like, wait a minute, you could just end up at point A at a very late time in your life if we're not really building all of these foundations.
It's true. But we, in our family and in our marriage, we have actually always put health as an important thing. We're not
Maybe not
saying
as much as we
not
should.
as much as should we get busy, right? But
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
we have agreed that it's an important thing. I would say that.
I would say we're hanging on to it.
We're
I would
hanging
say
on to it.
sometimes right now with just everything that we have going on,
Mhm.
proximally, I've noticed it's funny. You're like, and the perimenopausal, and I'm just like, well, actually, there's a lot of that I could relate to in my own like kind of hormonal going on with multiple businesses and all the logistics of everything that we're doing right now, where I'm seeing some of those stress pictures show up in my own life.
Sure. I've got a little bit of that cortisol puff.
And I am like, unlike many, I am extremely compliant with physician's instructions.
I'm gonna sit here and not make a face. Okay,
Yeah, I
great.
mean, we're going with it.
Anyway,
No,
okay.
no, I just, yeah, especially when you were talking about the cortisol and then the progesterone and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, weird.
So, of course, we have our friend the thyroid. It gets pulled into
Mm,
the storm, and the hormone shifts affect the thyroid function. And so we can see that symptom overlap. We can see symptoms of fatigue and gain and brain fog and constipation and digestive issues and skin issues and all of
mhm.
these different things. So, again, sometimes it's hard to see what's doing what.
Right. Like, is this primarily like a Hashimoto's, or is this primarily like a stress estrogen dominance type picture? And once I start resolving some of those things, my little like my thyroid and like whatever APO and all that stuff will start to
Yeah.
come back in line.
See our previous comments about the hormone hierarchy and how they interplay with each other. And you can't treat one without treating all of them, right?
Well, you can.
You can.
You can.
Might not work very
Yeah.
well. Okay.
Great.
So let's see. We have, of course, that we see some days you feel fine. We see some days you feel awful. Symptoms don't follow a clear pattern. It's not inconsistent behavior. It's an inconsistent physiology, right? So it's true. You're going to have spikes. You're going to have crashes. You're going to be fine. So it's all of those things during perimenopause. So to summarize all that, perimenopausal is hormonal, it's neurological, it's metabolic, it's emotional. I would add it's spiritual as well.
I would
All
strongly agree.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
I would say it's the beginning of a closing of a season of life.
How
Okay.
how perfect is that? Oh,
Ooh,
it's a season.
I didn't even know
Okay,
what she wrote.
great. Go for it.
Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is a season, a time appointed for everything under the sun."
Yes.
Yeah. So in our last one in this three-part series, you're going to be going into really
What
concrete
actually
takeaways
helps?
to fix it.
Yes.
To fix it. So
Yes. We
I
have to know what it is to
we will
fix
we will
first.
not leave you as orphans, like with all of these problems and physiology, but no solution.
Yes. We started I mean, we've
I know
given
we've
them
given them a little bit. I
some.
know, I know.
We've given
I
them
just,
some,
I
but I
just.
think it's important to do a little bit more.
Well, I think even hearing that case study where it's just like that's how bad it can get, and that what 3 to 6 months later, and you're having a completely transformed young life.
Yep. Yeah.
That in itself
Great
is
case.
encouraging.
Great case. And then also, like, on top of that, forgiveness within her family. Like, it's repaired the family dynamic too,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just the mom got to heal from that too, 'cause she got to talk about this. It's just it's so amazing. Like, when you're really transforming and you're really getting to the root of things, it just ripples through the entire family and then eventually the community, right? That's our hope.
Yeah, yeah, eventually the entire world, I would say.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's it. This is I know perimenopause is purgatory. You're the in between, but it's a transition between what maybe used to serve you and what no longer serves you, right? So we can compensate, we can compensate, we can compensate, and eventually that, as we talked about, the allostatic load is too much, breaks.
yeah.
And so what we're seeing is that the starting of the breakdown of that, and it's just very highlighted at this time of life
Mhm.
because maybe you relied on your hormones to be the stability too.
Okay.
Maybe it was like, well, I've always had good periods. It's always been good, but I'm kind of a stress case and my blood sugar's a little wonky and my thyroid's a little off. But you got that smoothing out because you had enough hormones to quell the fire, as they say.
Right.
And then all of a sudden that starts to become unstable. It's like, wow, now you're really seeing the cracks.
Right. You've gone to that watering hole just one too many times. Okay.
So in episode 50, which will be our part 3 and our final conclusion to the hormone purgatory, we're going to talk about what actually helps. I know I said we were going to talk about GLPs and peptides in this one, but I think we're going to talk about it in the next one. But we are going to talk about it
Okay.
because they are tools that can help. I
Yeah,
don't think that
peptides are fascinating.
they're fascinating. I think that they are abused. I don't think they're used correctly.
All
However,
Ozempic all the time.
yeah, I think there is amazing use cases for them, and I will share with you when I will use those. So we'll talk about those in the next episode. Fire your doctor.
I like that. That would fit really well with the solution.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Okay.